So I have been playing a lot of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, like many people have. But it has led me to some interesting theory crafting on a 5e build based on the version of Link that we see in this game. Just because Link's abilities in this game make him much different than we've seen him in other entries in the series, especially when you consider the Fuse and Ultra Hand abilities. So let's get into the build, and first off, we'll look at the ancestry. So for this one, I'm choosing High Elf, just because obviously Link looks very elf-like in this game and most other games, right? I think there's probably an argument for Wood Elf or maybe even Half Elf, but I think this one also just has the best ability score increases for us as well. But we also get, in addition to the ability score increases for dexterity and intelligence, we also get a cantrip, which we are used taking Booming Blade, because it'll help us with any weapon attacks we want to make to allow us to use our spellcasting modifier for it. And then we're also going to get the Elf Weapon Training. It will really come in handy when taking into consideration the longbow and the short sword, especially in the early levels. So just up front and center, this build is going to be a multi-class, as you can see here, and it's going to be taking both the Artificer and the Wizard. And so we're going to start with Artificer. Primarily so that we can get proficiency in Constitution saving throws. We also get to take cantrips with this build, and we're going to end up taking Green Flame Blade. And you can take Guidance if you want. And the other one I'd really recommend is Cure Wounds, just because it's always useful. The other ones on this list are just some other personal preferences. Feel free to take whatever you want. And then the reason we're taking 2 levels in this class is because we're going to get Artificer Infusions. So with that, Artificer Infusions, the ones I would really recommend taking are the Enhanced Arcane Focus, so we can get that +1 to spell attack rolls, Enhanced Defense, Enhanced Weapon, and then for fun I just took the last one as Pull of Angling. Feel free to take whatever you want. But one other thing to keep in consideration is that obviously these can be applied to yourself, your own equipment, but you can also apply this magical weapon or these magical armor effects to your party's equipment. So just keep that in mind, because it can be very useful and help them out as well as yourself. So next we're going to go over to our ability scores. And so for ability scores, we're going to start with Point Buy, and we're going to make our intelligence of 15, Constitution of 14, Dexterity 14, Strength 10, Wisdom 8, and Charisma also 10. So for this one, the reason we're having our intelligence be the highest stat is obviously because we're choosing Artificer and Wizard for our classes, but also because Link is a very smart character in the games. He's constantly facing all these puzzles as a challenge, no matter in whatever game you see him in. Obviously in Tears of the Kingdom he has all of the shrines, but you see him constantly doing this throughout every game. He has to face the water temple, the fire temple, or whatever it is, to overcome that, beat the boss in some kind of combat, and then go rescue the princess or save the world, whatever the game has him doing in that version. So I think he's a very smart character. Dexterity kind of being our second highest one, because obviously he's a sword fighter, and this one makes sense for that. And Wisdom I put as our lowest, just because I think it makes sense when you have to take into consideration he always starts from square one in every game. I think you just say that's probably a game design effect, but we just had to choose one being the lowest, and I think Wisdom kind of fits in this regard. So next we're going to look at background. For this one I chose Folk Hero, just because he is very much that character who always starts from like a humble beginning in like a little village or something like that, along those lines, but then he becomes so much more. I think it perfectly makes sense if you want to be a soldier or a knight, but that's what I chose here. And feel free to choose whatever you want. Okay, so for the rest of our levels, we're going to take Wizard. So Wizard obviously fits with Intelligence, but we're doing it mostly to get to Blade Singer. So once we get 2 levels into Wizard, we can take our subclass, which will be Blade Singer. So with that, we get some really awesome benefits. We get the Training in War and Song. So this one, we already have proficiency in light armor, but this is when we're really going to want to put that light armor on because of our Blade Song feature. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then we also get proficiency in one type of melee weapon. For this, we're going to choose the Rapier because it is the best dexterity-based melee weapon. And then we're going to go down to Blade Song. And this is the reason we want to wear light armor. So if you look right here, it says you can use a bonus action to start the Blade Song, which lasts for 1 minute. It ends early if you are incapacitated, don medium armor, or heavy armor, or a shield. So we're not using any of those things. But it gives us all these other benefits. We get a bonus to our AC based on our intelligence modifier. We get walking speed increased by 10 feet. Advantage on dexterity acrobatic checks. We gain a bonus to our constitution saving throw to maintain concentration equal to our intelligence modifier. So that will combo really nicely with our proficiency in constitution saving throws coming from Artificer. So it's going to be really hard to knock us out of any concentration spells we are casting. So a couple other things we want to highlight as we come down or gain more levels in Wizard is our Song of Defense. So this allows us to consume a spell slot to reduce damage that is incoming towards us, right? And it's equivalent to the level of the spell times 5. So that can be really useful in a pinch. And then we also get the Song of Victory, which allows us to add our intelligence modifier to the damage of our melee weapon attacks while Blade Song is active, right? So that gives us a nice little, as long as we max our intelligence out, it gives us a nice little bonus of a +5 to every attack we make with our melee weapon, which will be using the Rapier, +5. And at this level, right, we'd be a 16th level character, so we probably have we probably would have a magic weapon. But even if we don't have a magic weapon at this level, we could still infuse our weapon to be a +1 Rapier at this level. So that would also help us with damage when we get a little higher up there. So because of this build, we really want to max our intelligence out as soon as possible. So I really recommend doing that when you get a chance to. You could definitely consider taking some feats, maybe like mobile or something like that. But really, your primary focus should be getting to your highest intelligence as soon as possible so that you can maximize the benefits of your Blade Song. And then some recommended spells, or at least spells I think are very thematic for this build. The first of which is going to be Fabricate. So if you're not familiar with Fabricate is that spell that lets you turn a bunch of trees or logs into a bridge across a river, or you can use to get up to higher places in the game. You can do very much the similar thing in D&D by using the spell Fabricate. Obviously there's more uses, depends on how creative you are and what your DM will let you get away with, but I think this is an awesome thematic spell for this build that also just doesn't get talked about very often. And then the next one I want to talk about is Creation, because Creation lets us create something out of either a vegetable matter, so something like a rope, or wood, or stone or crystal or metal. So this one I think you can really form into being like the Zonai devices that you could just throw out of your inventory. Something like a mirror, or maybe even a fan, if your DM will let you do that. So really it's up to, what kind of creative stuff you could come up with and what your DM is okay with. But I think there's a lot of potential between those two spells to build interesting things or something like that. And the last one I really wanted to highlight is Steel Wind Strike. This spell is awesome. It's one that you don't see highlighted often enough because I think it's primarily on the wizard spell list. I think some of the other subclasses get it, but they'll get it at very high levels. I think Ranger gets it. But it's one of those ones that is very awesome because it lets you make those melee spell attacks against 5 different targets. And as long as you hit, you do 60-10 force damage. And then you can teleport to a space 5 feet away. This spell is awesome, and I think you could definitely flavor it in Tears of the Kingdom style, like a flurry rush, right? You cast your spell, you just rush up to these characters, you slash them a bunch of times, you teleport to the next one, slash them a bunch of times, and it would look awesome. It feels awesome to land this if you do in a game. Very cool spell. Perfect for Blade Singers, perfect for Link. And one other thing I wanted to call attention to is with your other spells in this, so say something like Firebolt or some of these other ones, maybe like Acid Arrow or whatever else you decide to choose, you can flavor all of these very much like you would Legend in Tears of the Kingdom. You flavor it as something like you're throwing a fire fruit for your Firebolt or something along those lines to get the desired spell effect while still maintaining that you're more sword fighter who is just using the tools you have available. So this build provides a way to bring an interesting bit of Zelda-inspired flavor to your own wizard/artificer character. So if you like this, hey, give the video a like and leave a comment